Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tip Talks Tech. Today, we're going to be talking about how we've officially entered into a renter trust recession and how most of the industry has not caught up yet. We're talking about lead volume, conversion rates, cost per lease, all of that. But renters are telling us something different with their behavior, and we can see it. They are hesitating, second guessing, and asking more questions, not fewer. We can see that the data is starting to prove what renters have felt for quite a while, and that is that they don't trust us. So today I want to talk about where renter trust is breaking down, why technology is part of that problem, and why trust, not traffic, is the next competitive battleground in multifamily and why that's so important. So, kind of diving in, let's talk about what the data is really saying. Let's start with the signals, not the spin. We're seeing renters cross-checking reviews across multiple platforms to make sure that they're even real. We're seeing a lot of abandoned applications. They might find a property they like and then decide that they need to move on because it's not exactly what they thought. We're seeing higher friction questions during the tour process and then longer decision-making timelines. It's not just a price issue. We're seeing a lot of trust erosion across the board. And then renters are starting to ask, is this rent that I'm seeing actually the real rent? Are these fees the real fees that I'm going to be paying every month, or am I going to be surprised by something that pops up? And they're also asking if the AI bots are giving real answers or just convenient ones. When people don't trust the process, they tend to slow down or just walk across the finish line. They don't end up leasing as quickly as we would like them to. And then that has a big financial impact on you as well, as it takes longer to lease those apartments. You might have empty units just sitting there. So it is something that eventually will affect the finances. Let's talk about how reviews do not feel real anymore. They used to be a trust shortcut, and now renters, they're treating them like marketing copy because they've seen so much, review soliciting and just paying people for reviews. I mean, I've told this story before, but I went out to get Hawaiian food one day and I'm sitting there waiting for my food, and the lady who's working behind the counter comes up and she's like, "Hey, would you like a free Dole Whip?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, my kids would love that." And then she's like, "Okay, great. Leave us a 5-star review and then I'll give you the Dole Whip." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." But she stood behind me the whole time, and it wasn't like, "Leave me a review, tell me about your experience." It was, "Leave me a 5-star review and I'm going to stand here while you do it, and then you can have your ice cream." So, and that's a lot of times what we see happening in our industry. It's like, "Hey, leave us a review. You might get a discount on your rent." I don't know what are people offering, but it is eroding the trust of renters. We're seeing overly polished responses from the on-site teams. We're seeing obvious review gating and, again, incentivized feedback across the board. And renters are able to spot that pretty easily. So instead of asking, are there any good reviews, they're starting to ask which reviews feel real, true, and honest and are not fake. Especially because, I mean, we've talked about this for years about how if there are properties with just all 5-star reviews, it's really hard to believe. And then you really have to go in there and dig into the reviews to find out if those are real or not. And it's becoming more and more clear that trust, it's not just built by having perfection, having a great experience. It's also built by credibility and making sure that what they're seeing is the real deal. So let's talk about the biggest trust killer of them all now, which is fees. And there are definitely mixed perspectives about this in our industry. And we keep saying we're transparent now. It is difficult because a lot of times we feel like we're being forced to be transparent with laws that are coming into place more and more. But renters are experiencing rent advertised without any context around it. They're seeing fees being revealed later in their journey, maybe even after they've already moved in or paid their first month's rent, and optional charges that don't feel like they are optional. I remember when I worked on site, we were just rolling out smart apartments, and really it was just that you could unlock your door from your phone. That was pretty much it. And I know there's better smart apartment options now out these days, but in order to have that in your apartment, you had to pay $30 a month additional. And a lot of times it wasn't really an option. It was like your apartment's getting smart apartments and you're going to have to pay for that. You don't really have a choice. So we see that quite a bit. And we know that transparency, it's not just posting a fee list somewhere on your site either, or adding a tooltip to the pricing page. It's really going to be having no surprises for that resident. Every surprise that pops up for them, it costs your community trust. And once that trust is gone, no concession is going to buy it back. So it is extremely important that you don't erode that trust that you're building with the resident. And again, transparency, it means different things to people. And I know that it can be very nuanced, especially when we're feeling like we're being forced to be transparent. But it is so imperative that we are showing the renter what exactly is coming their way and what they're going to have to pay so that they know what's coming up and if they can actually afford it, especially with today's economy and what we're being faced with. Let's talk about AI and where that kind of erodes the authenticity and the trust. It's really supposed to make leasing easier, but for many renters, it's actually making it the opposite. And so it just kind of depends. I'm not saying don't use AI. Of course, I've been a big proponent of AI, especially in so many of my episodes, but we are seeing on the renter side bots that might dodge questions, give really vague answers, or overpromise that availability that's out there. And of course, renters, they're not anti AI either. They like it, it makes their lives easier as well. But they don't want to feel handled instead of helped. And that trust really breaks when the answers feel scripted and the conversations just kind of go in circles. And it can be really unclear when it's being escalated to a human as well. If the renters can't tell what's real, then they're going to assume none of it is. And it's really difficult. I mean, I've said this for years. Renters, they don't want to feel tricked unless they're at a magic show. So they want to know when it's AI and that they can be escalated to a human when necessary. I know I've had calls as well, like those AI phone calls where I'm just trying to get to a human desperately and I'm going in circles just saying, human, 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 give me a human. And it can be really frustrating for the renter when they can't get the help that they need. Let's talk about why this is a leadership problem. Here's the part that we avoid, and it's not an on site issue, it's not a marketing issue, and it's not a tech issue. It is a leadership issue because trust erosion, I mean, it happens when short term performance beats long term credibility. And it also happens when speed is more important than being clear and upfront. We can see tools are optimized for efficiency and not honesty a lot of the time. And that really affects the trust that is there. You can't automate that. You have to design for it and make sure that you're working towards that trust and actively pursuing it. Here's the opportunity that we all have. In a market where renters expect to be misled, the brands that consistently win are ones that explain pricing before they're asked. They don't just gatekeep that information. The ones that are responding to reviews without defensiveness and actually providing problem solving into any issues that arise. We also can see that when we use AI to clarify, but not obscure the information and not hide anything. We don't want to give people the runaround instead of actually helping them. And then it's also important that we empower on site teams to be honest. Even if it might cost us a lease, it's better than having a bad reputation because you weren't upfront and able to share the information that is going to be important to that renter. Trust, it isn't scalable in a quick way, but it does compound over time. And in a renter trust recession, credibility is one of your rarest assets. And that is one of the most important things to focus on. So instead of asking ourselves, how do we get more leads? How do we speed up the leasing funnel? We really should be asking, where are renters losing trust in our process? How can we fix that? Because renters aren't ghosting, they're protecting themselves a lot of the time. And the communities that win, they're not going to be the loudest or the cheapest. They're going to be the most believable. If this episode made you a little bit uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. If you're a marketer, operator, or vendor, you need to start auditing your renter journey through a trust lens because trust, it's not a soft metric anymore. It is the next performance metric that we can't afford to ignore anymore. So if you've enjoyed this episode or you found it useful, please subscribe and tune in next week for more Tip Talks Tech Insights.